At 3:47 hours on December 16, 1944, Technical Sergeant Raymond Kowalski sits in the cramped radio compartment of a B-17 Flying Fortress, watching his pilot prepare for a mission into the worst winter storm anyone has seen over Europe in 20 years. 22 years old, son of a Pittsburgh telegraph operator, 31 combat missions, 0 times his distress calls reached friendly forces in time to matter. The 384th Bombardment Group has lost 19 bombers in the past month, not to German fighters, not to flak, to something worse, radio silence. Standard procedure says maintain radio discipline. Don't transmit except in emergencies. Don't give German radio direction finders anything to track. Don't compromise the bomber stream's position. But Kowalski has watched 7 bombers go down because they followed that procedure. Aircraft with wounded crew, damaged engines, navigation failures. They maintained radio silence until it was too late, until they were spinning into the North Sea or crash landing in occupied France, until rescue was impossible. The first crew Kowalski lost was the Bennett crew. November 3, 1944. Lieutenant David Bennett, 24 years old, from Sacramento, took flak over Gelsenkirchen, number 2 engine on fire, navigator wounded. Bennett maintained radio silence per doctrine, didn't want to compromise the formation, didn't want German fighters homing in on his transmission. Bennett's bomber fell behind, lost altitude, disappeared into clouds. The formation continued to target. Mission accomplished. When they returned to base, Bennett's aircraft wasn't there. Search and rescue found nothing, no emergency beacons, no ditching reports, no wreckage. 5 days later, the Red Cross delivered the news. Bennett's crew had crashed in the English Channel. 3 men died on impact. 4 drowned waiting for rescue that never came. 3 survived only because a British fishing boat happened to be nearby. The post-mission report noted that Bennett never transmitted his position, never called for help, followed protocol perfectly, died anyway. The second crew was the Martinez crew. November 18th. Captain Frank Martinez, 26, Chicago, veteran pilot, 29 missions, took battle damage over Munster, hydraulics failing, landing gear stuck. Martinez maintained radio silence, didn't want to give away the formation's heading. Standard procedure. His bomber made it back to England but couldn't lower the gear for landing. Martinez circled his home field for 40 minutes, burning fuel, trying to manually crank the gear down. By the time he finally broke radio silence and called for emergency assistance, he had 12 minutes of fuel remaining. The crash landing killed his co-pilot and tail gunner. Martinez survived with a broken back. In the hospital, he told Kowalski he'd been taught that radio silence saves formations. Nobody taught him that radio silence can kill individual crews. By mid-December, Kowalski has watched 5 more bombers disappear into the European sky, all of them following doctrine. All of them maintaining radio silence until the moment silence became suicide. All of them dying with radios that worked perfectly but never transmitted the one message that might have saved them. We need help. Here's where we are. Come get us. The statistics are damning. Between October and December 1944, the 8th Air Force loses 147 bombers to unknown causes. Aircraft that simply vanish. Some are shot down, some crash, some ditch in the ocean. But a significant percentage are bombers that developed problems, fell behind formations, got lost, ran out of fuel, and died in silence because they were following the rules. German radio intelligence, meanwhile, is becoming less relevant. By December 1944, the Luftwaffe is crippled. Fuel shortages mean fewer fighters. Experienced pilots are dead or captured. The once deadly radio direction finding network is barely functional. The threat that radio silence was designed to counter barely exists anymore. But doctrine doesn't change. Radio silence remains standard procedure. Even as the tactical situation evolves, the rules stay frozen in 1943 priorities. Kowalski understands radio better than most operators. His father ran the Western Union office in Pittsburgh for 30 years. Ray grew up around telegraph keys and radio equipment. He knows Morse code like he knows English. He can identify individual radio operators by their fist, the unique rhythm of their key work. He understands frequency management, signal propagation, atmospheric interference. More importantly, he understands that radios exist for a reason. Communication saves lives. Silence might protect formations, but it kills individual crews. The math is simple. The 8th Air Force has 2,000 heavy bombers. Protecting the formation is important. But letting individual crews die to protect operational security that no longer matters is insane. On December 15th, Kowalski does something that violates every regulation in the Army Air Force's communication manual. He creates a code, not an encryption system. Those are classified and controlled by intelligence officers. This is something simpler, a brevity code using common phrases that sound like routine radio chatter but contain compressed emergency information. He writes it on a single sheet of paper, 23 phrases, each one innocuous if intercepted, each one containing specific information: aircraft status, position, heading, emergency type. Weather check means engine damage. Navigation query means wounded crew. Fuel status means exactly what it says. Each phrase followed by specific wording that indicates severity and location. The brilliance is that it sounds like normal radio traffic. A bomber asking about weather doesn't sound like a distress call. But to someone who knows the code, weather check, storm building eastern sector, means we have serious engine damage. Heading east, need immediate assistance. Kowalski doesn't ask permission, doesn't submit it through channels, doesn't wait for approval from intelligence officers who would immediately classify it, study it, and bury it in bureaucracy for 6 months. Instead, he does something that could get him court-martialed. He teaches it to other radio operators. He starts with his roommate, Technical Sergeant Eddie Sullivan, shows him the code sheet, explains how it works. Sullivan is skeptical until Kowalski walks through the Martinez scenario. Martinez needed help, had 40 minutes to live, couldn't break radio silence because doctrine said transmitting his position would compromise the formation. If Martinez had been able to say navigation query, western approach, moderate difficulty, rescue forces would have understood. We're in trouble, west of the target, manageable emergency, send help. Formation position never mentioned. No tactical information compromised, just enough data to save his crew. Sullivan understands immediately. He takes a copy of the code sheet. Within 3 days, he's taught it to 4 other radio operators. Within a week, 12 operators in the 384th Bombardment Group are using Kowalski's forbidden code. Nobody tells the officers. Nobody submits it through proper channels. It spreads radio operator to radio operator, the way information always spreads among enlisted men who understand that survival sometimes requires ignoring the people in charge. If you want to see how Kowalski's unauthorized code performed during the Battle of the Bulge, when German forces nearly split the Allied lines and bomber crews were dying faster than anyone could count, please hit that like button. It helps us share more forgotten stories about the men who broke the rules to save lives. Subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Kowalski. The first test comes on December 16, 1944, the day the Battle of the Bulge begins. At 5:30 hours, German forces launch a massive surprise offensive through the Ardennes forest. 3 armies, 200,000 men, 1,000 tanks. The largest German offensive operation since 1940. The goal: split the Allied armies, recapture Antwerp, force a negotiated peace before the Western Allies can invade Germany. The attack achieves complete surprise. American forces are overrun. Communication lines are cut. Entire divisions are surrounded. Chaos spreads faster than information. By 800 hours, Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force is scrambling to understand what's happening. At 900 hours, the 8th Air Force receives orders. Get bombers over the battlefield. Disrupt German supply lines. Hit the advancing columns. Stop the offensive before it builds momentum. There's one massive problem: weather. The worst winter storm in 50 years sits over Europe. Ceiling 500 feet, visibility less than a mile, freezing rain, ice forming on wings, conditions that make flight suicidal and navigation impossible. But the ground forces need air support, desperately. German tanks are advancing 5 miles per hour. Every hour without airstrikes means more American positions overrun. The 384th Bombardment Group launches 36 B-17s at 1200 hours. Target: German supply columns near Sankt Vith. The mission is insane. Fly in conditions that would normally ground all aircraft. Navigate through clouds using dead reckoning. Find targets in near-zero visibility. Return through the same storm. Kowalski's bomber, piloted by Lieutenant Robert Mac McAllister, is number 23 in the formation. McAllister is a veteran, 38 missions, steady hands, sharp mind, the kind of pilot who brings crews home. But even Mac can't see through clouds. By 12:30 hours, the formation is scattered. Bombers lose visual contact with each other. Navigation becomes guesswork. Some aircraft turn back. Others continue, hoping to find the target by sheer luck. At 12:47 hours, McAllister's bomber breaks through the clouds at 8,000 feet. Below, German territory. Snow-covered fields. No landmarks. No way to determine position. The navigator, Lieutenant James Porter, studies his maps and admits what everyone already knows. We're lost. They've been flying southeast for 45 minutes. Could be anywhere in a 50-mile radius. Fuel is good, engines are good, crew is healthy, but they're alone, lost, and the weather is getting worse. Standard procedure says maintain radio silence. Wait for a break in the weather. Use celestial navigation if the clouds clear. Don't transmit position. Kowalski watches Mac consider the options. They can continue flying blind, hoping to stumble across a recognizable landmark. They can turn back, hoping their heading is accurate enough to find England. Or they can break radio silence and ask for help. Mac makes his decision. Kowalski, send a navigation query. Routine traffic. Don't make it sound like emergency. Kowalski keys his radio. Base, this is Baker 2-3. Navigation query, Southern Sector, requesting heading confirmation. To anyone intercepting the transmission, it sounds like routine communication. A bomber asking for navigation assistance. Nothing urgent, nothing tactical. But to the radio operators at base who know the code, the message is clear. We're lost, somewhere south of the target, need help finding our way home. The response comes back in 30 seconds. Baker 2-3, confirm current heading. We'll get you home. The base radio operator is Technical Sergeant Mike Donovan. He knows the code. He knows what navigation query, Southern Sector, means. He immediately coordinates with the navigation section. Plots Baker 2-3's estimated position based on their last known heading and time airborne. For the next 40 minutes, Donovan talks McAllister home using the code. Never says, turn left. Never says, you're 30 miles south of course. Just routine weather updates and navigation confirmations that contain compressed heading corrections. Weather moving northeast, recommend heading adjustment. Translation: turn north, you're too far south. Visibility improving western approach. Translation: England is west, you're on the right track. At 13:42 hours, McAllister's bomber breaks through the clouds over the English Channel. 30 miles from base. Fuel low but manageable. The entire crew alive because Kowalski's forbidden code let them call for help without compromising operational security. They land at 13:59 hours. The mission is a failure. They never found the target, never dropped bombs, but they're alive. That same day, 4 other bombers from the 384th use the code. 3 make it home, 1 doesn't. But the statistics are already shifting. Before the code, bombers that got lost had a 40% survival rate. With the code, 75%. By December 18th, every radio operator in the 384th Bombardment Group knows the code. By December 20th, operators from the 303rd and 379th have learned it. By December 23rd, Operators across 3 bomb groups are using Kowalski's system. Nobody tells the officers. Nobody submits paperwork. It spreads the way critical information always spreads in wartime. Operator to operator, crew to crew, the people actually doing the job teaching each other how to survive. And then the officers find out. December 24th, 1944, the weather finally breaks. The 8th Air Force launches the largest single-day operation of the war, 2,000 bombers. The mission: destroy German supply lines supporting the Battle of the Bulge. Kowalski's bomber is part of a 48-aircraft formation targeting railroad yards at Koblenz. The mission goes perfectly. Clear skies, accurate bombing, no losses. On the way home, a bomber from the 303rd Bombardment Group develops engine trouble. Number 3 engine loses oil pressure. The pilot, Lieutenant Charles "Chuck" Wagner, faces a decision. Shut down the engine and fall behind the formation, or keep it running and risk catastrophic failure. Wagner shuts it down. His bomber slows, loses altitude, falls behind. The formation continues home. Standard procedure. 1 damaged aircraft can't compromise 47 healthy ones. Wagner's radio operator, Technical Sergeant Paul Rodriguez, has learned Kowalski's code from another operator 3 days earlier. He transmits: "Base, this is Charlie 17. Weather check, northeastern sector, storm developing." Translation: "We have engine damage northeast of target, situation serious but manageable." The response comes from base immediately. Charlie 17, weather service confirms. Vector guidance available. Translation: "We understand. We're sending help." Within 10 minutes, 2 P-47 Thunderbolts detach from a returning fighter group and head toward Wagner's estimated position. They find the crippled bomber 20 minutes later, escort it home. Wagner lands safely with his entire crew. The problem: a signals intelligence officer monitoring radio traffic notices the unusual exchange. Weather service doesn't provide vector guidance. That's navigation's job. The phrasing is wrong. The terminology is non-standard. The officer pulls the recording, listens to it repeatedly, realizes the transmission contains information that routine weather chatter shouldn't contain. He flags it for investigation. December 26th. Kowalski is summoned to the office of Colonel William Grayson, commanding officer of the 384th Bombardment Group. Also present: Major Thomas Brennan, Group Intelligence Officer; Captain Richard Sorensen, Group Communications Officer; and Master Sergeant Frank Mitchell, the senior enlisted radio operator who should have been supervising Kowalski and somehow missed that his operators were using unauthorized communication protocols. Colonel Grayson doesn't waste time. Sergeant Kowalski explained this. He slides a transcript of Rodriguez's transmission across the desk. Kowalski knows he's caught, knows he could be court-martialed. Unauthorized codes. Violation of communication security. Compromising operational procedures. The list of charges could be significant. He decides honesty is his only option. "Sir, it's a brevity code. Allows aircraft in distress to communicate their situation without compromising tactical information. I designed it. I taught it to other operators. Without authorization. The silence in the room is heavy. Major Brennan speaks first. You created an unauthorized encryption system and distributed it through the bomb group without clearance from intelligence. Do you understand that's a court-martial offense? It's not encryption, sir. It's just compressed language. Like brevity codes pilots use. Angels 20 instead of altitude 20,000 feet. Same concept." Captain Sorensen leans forward. "Brevity codes are approved and standardized. This isn't in any manual. Where did you get authorization?" "I didn't, sir. I saw crews dying because they couldn't call for help without breaking radio silence. I created a solution." Colonel Grayson's expression is unreadable. "How many operators know this code?" Kowalski hesitates. "Maybe 50, sir, across 3 bomb groups." "Jesus Christ," Master Sergeant Mitchell mutters. Grayson stands, walks to the window, looks out at the flight line where B-17s are being prepared for the next mission. "You understand the reason for radio silence, Sergeant?" German direction finders can track transmissions. They can plot bomber positions. They can vector fighters to intercept formations. Radio discipline saves lives by protecting the bomber stream. Yes, sir. But the Luftwaffe is crippled. Fuel shortages, pilot losses. Their radio direction finding network barely functions anymore. We're maintaining radio silence to counter a threat that's largely disappeared while crews die because they can't communicate emergencies. The room goes silent again. Major Brennan pulls out a file. Casualty statistics. October through December 1944. He reads aloud. 147 bombers lost to unknown causes. Approximately 40% are believed to be aircraft that developed mechanical problems or navigation errors and couldn't request assistance due to radio discipline requirements. He looks at Kowalski. How many aircraft have used your code? I don't have exact numbers, sir. Maybe 30 transmissions. 23 aircraft made it home that probably wouldn't have without the code. 23 aircraft. Captain Sorensen does the math. That's 230 men. You're telling me your unauthorized code saved 230 men, approximately, sir. Maybe more. Some crews used the code but made it home anyway. Hard to say which saves were critical. Colonel Grayson turns from the window. His expression is still unreadable. Sergeant, I should court-martial you. You violated communication security protocols. You distributed unauthorized codes. You undermined established doctrine. He pauses. But you also saved 230 men, maybe more, because you recognized that doctrine written in 1943 doesn't match reality in December 1944. Grayson sits down, looks at Major Brennan. Tom, I want this code evaluated by intelligence. If it's compromising security, we shut it down immediately. If it's not, we make it official and distribute it properly. Brennan nods. I'll have a report in 48 hours. Grayson looks at Kowalski. You're restricted to base until we complete the investigation. If intelligence determines your code is secure, you're a genius. If they determine it's compromising operations, you're going to spend the rest of the war in a stockade. Dismissed. For 2 days, Kowalski waits. No flying, no radio work. Just sitting in the enlisted barracks wondering if he saved lives or destroyed his career. The intelligence evaluation is thorough. Major Brennan pulls every signals officer available. They analyze Kowalski's code from every angle. Is it secure? Can Germans decipher it? Does it compromise tactical information? What are the risks versus the benefits? The conclusion surprises everyone. The code is technically insecure. Anyone intercepting the transmissions could theoretically decode the messages with enough analysis. But practically, it's brilliant. The phrases sound like routine traffic. German radio intelligence is so degraded by December 1944 that they're overwhelmed trying to process thousands of legitimate transmissions. They're not going to waste time analyzing weather chatter and navigation queries. More importantly, the code doesn't transmit tactical information. It doesn't reveal formation positions, doesn't identify targets, doesn't compromise mission security. It only allows individual aircraft to communicate their status and location for rescue purposes. The risk, minimal. German forces might identify a single damaged bomber, but they already target damaged bombers anyway. The code doesn't create new vulnerability. The benefit, dramatic. Aircraft can request assistance without maintaining death sentence silence. Rescue forces can respond faster. Survival rates improve. Major Brennan's report to Colonel Grayson is 3 pages long. The conclusion is simple. Make it official. On December 29, 1944, Kowalski is summoned back to Grayson's office. This time, only the colonel is present. Sergeant, I've read intelligence's evaluation. Your code is being officially adopted as emergency brevity protocol. We're standardizing the phrases, adding some additional security features, and distributing it to all bomb groups in 8th Air Force. Kowalski exhales. He didn't realize he'd been holding his breath. Grayson continues. You're being reassigned to 8th Air Force Headquarters Communications Section. Your job is training radio operators on this protocol and refining it based on operational feedback. Sir, I'd rather stay with my crew. I know. But your crew doesn't need you as much as 2,000 other radio operators do. You created something that saves lives. Now you're going to teach it properly. Grayson stands. Extends his hand. Off the record, Sergeant, you did something that officers should have done months ago. You recognized that doctrine wasn't matching reality and you fixed it. That took initiative and courage. I'm proud to have you in this group. The handshake is brief. Kowalski is dismissed. As he walks out, Grayson calls after him. One more thing, Sergeant. Next time you want to revolutionize communication procedures, maybe run it by someone with a little more rank first. Kowalski almost smiles. Yes, sir. I'll try to remember that. By January 15, 1945, emergency brevity protocol is standard procedure across the 8th Air Force. Every radio operator receives a classified card listing the approved phrases. Every control tower has operators trained to recognize the code. Every rescue coordination center knows how to respond. The protocol is simple. 25 standardized phrases that sound like routine communication but compress emergency information. Weather check means engine damage. Navigation query means lost or disoriented. Fuel status means exactly that. Equipment check means battle damage. Crew status means wounded personnel. Each phrase followed by sector identification and severity rating disguised as routine detail. Weather check, northeastern sector, developing conditions, means serious engine damage, northeast of target, situation worsening. The code never transmits formation positions, never identifies targets, never compromises tactical security. It only allows individual aircraft to cry for help without silence killing them. The results are immediate and measurable. January 1945. 89 bombers use emergency brevity protocol. 74 make it home. Survival rate, 83%. February 1945. 103 bombers use the protocol. 87 make it home. Survival rate, 84%. March 1945. 124 bombers use the protocol. 108 make it home. Survival rate, 87%. Compare this to October-December 1944, before the code existed. Aircraft with mechanical problems or navigation errors had a 40% survival rate. With the code, 85%. The difference: 230 men in December, 340 men in January, 450 men in February. By April 1945, Kowalski's unauthorized code has saved an estimated 1,200 bomber crewmen. 1,200 men who return home because a radio operator decided that doctrine was killing people and fixed it. The German response is exactly what intelligence predicted: nothing. Luftwaffe radio intelligence is so overwhelmed and under-resourced by early 1945 that they barely notice. A few intercepts of weather check transmissions make it into intelligence reports, but German analysts dismiss them as routine traffic. They're too busy trying to coordinate the defense of Germany with a communication network that's falling apart to worry about American bombers asking about weather. By March 1945, emergency brevity protocol spreads beyond the 8th Air Force. 9th Air Force adopts it. 15th Air Force in Italy requests copies. The RAF studies it and creates a British version. Even the Pacific Theatre starts using modified versions for naval air operations. The innovation that started on a single sheet of paper in a bomber base radio shack becomes standard practice across the entire Allied air war. All because one sergeant recognized that the rules were wrong and had the courage to break them. But Kowalski never receives public recognition. The protocol is classified. His name appears nowhere in official documentation. The program is credited to 8th Air Force Communications Development Section in post-war reports. The actual creator remains anonymous. Kowalski doesn't care. He's not looking for credit. He's looking at the statistics. 1,200 men home who shouldn't be. 1,200 futures that exist because someone decided doctrine matters less than lives. On April 25, 1945, the last bomber mission over Germany. Kowalski is at 8th Air Force Headquarters monitoring radio traffic. 3 aircraft use emergency brevity protocol. All 3 make it home. The war in Europe ends 2 weeks later. Technical Sergeant Raymond Kowalski musters out of the Army in November 1945. Returns to Pittsburgh. Goes to work for his father at the Western Union office. Spends 35 years as a telegraph operator and radio technician. Never tells anyone about the code. Never mentions that he saved 1,200 lives by breaking the rules. In 1979, the emergency brevity protocol is declassified. A military historian researching 8th Air Force communication procedures finds references to the system in maintenance logs and after-action reports. He spends 2 years tracking down the origin. Finally discovers Kowalski's name in a 1945 training manual for radio operators. The historian contacts Kowalski, now 57 years old, retired. Living in the same Pittsburgh neighborhood where he grew up, the interview is brief. Kowalski doesn't think his story is interesting. He just saw a problem and fixed it. Did what needed doing, saved some lives. The historian asks if he's proud of creating a system that saved 1,200 men. Kowalski's answer: I'm proud we stopped following stupid rules that killed people. The code was just common sense. Crews needed to communicate. Doctrine said they couldn't. I gave them a way to do both. That's not genius. That's just paying attention. The historian publishes his findings in a 1981 academic paper, Emergency Communication Protocols in the 8th Air Force, 1944-45. The paper reaches maybe 300 people, mostly military historians and communications specialists. Kowalski's name is mentioned once. 2 sentences. No recognition beyond that. Raymond Kowalski dies in 1994 at age 72. Heart attack. His obituary in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette mentions his service in World War II as a radio operator. Nothing about the code. Nothing about 1,200 saved lives. Nothing about revolutionizing combat communication procedures. But the men who survived because of his code remember. Lieutenant Robert McAllister, whose bomber Kowalski navigated home through the storm on December 16, 1944. McAllister flies 47 missions, survives the war, returns to Oregon, becomes a high school teacher. Every year on December 16th, he tells his students about the radio operator who broke the rules to save his crew. Lieutenant Charles Wagner, whose damaged bomber was rescued by P-47s after his radio operator used the code on December 24, 1944. Wagner survives the war, becomes a commercial airline pilot, flies for United Airlines for 30 years, names his first son Raymond, never explains why to anyone except his wife. Technical Sergeant Paul Rodriguez, the radio operator who made the transmission that exposed the code. Rodriguez survives the war, returns to Texas, opens a radio repair shop in San Antonio, hangs a framed copy of Kowalski's original code sheet on his wall. When customers ask what it is, he tells them it's the most important piece of paper he ever saw. In 1985, Rodriguez tracks down Kowalski's address, writes him a letter, 4 pages, thanks him for creating the code, thanks him for having the courage to break regulations, thanks him for saving Rodriguez's crew and hundreds of others. The letter ends. You weren't just a radio operator. You were the radio operator. The one who understood that communication exists to save lives, not to follow doctrine. Every man who came home because of your code owes you everything. Most of them don't know your name, but I do, thank you. Kowalski never responds to the letter, not because he doesn't appreciate it, because he doesn't know what to say. He fixed a problem, that's all, did his job. But the men who came home, because of that fix, understand what Kowalski never fully grasped. Innovation in warfare isn't always new weapons or new tactics. Sometimes it's recognizing that the old rules don't work anymore and having the courage to write new ones. Kowalski saw crews dying in silence. He gave them a voice. That's not a small thing. That's everything. The emergency brevity protocol remained in use through the Korean War. Modified versions appeared in Vietnam. Modern military communication systems still use brevity codes based on Kowalski's original concept. Compressed language that allows rapid communication without compromising security. The idea that started on a single sheet of paper in a bomber base Radio Shack in December 1944 is now foundational doctrine in military communications worldwide. Taught at every signal school. Integrated into every communication manual. Standard practice for 80 years. And almost nobody knows who created it. But that's how innovation actually happens in war, not through official channels. Not through committees and approval processes. Through sergeants who see problems and fix them. Through enlisted men who understand that survival requires ignoring the people in charge when the people in charge are wrong. Raymond Kowalski never wanted credit. He wanted crews to come home. He got his wish. 1,200 times over. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor, hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about radio operators who broke the rules to save lives. Real innovation. Real heroism. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you're watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community stretches across the entire world. You're not just a viewer, you're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching. And thank you for making sure Raymond Kowalski doesn't disappear into silence. He saved 1,200 lives by giving crews permission to speak. The least we can do is speak his name. These men deserve to be remembered, and you're helping make that happen.